G'day, you mob. How's it going? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. I am your host, Pete, and this is another Pete's 2 Cents episode of the podcast where I am going to answer your questions. So I put this up on Instagram. I'm trying to do it more regularly. It's a funny word. I'm trying to do it more frequently and answer your questions on there, but I obviously also use those questions for these Q&A Pete's 2 Cents episodes. So if you have something you'd like to ask me in the future, go over to Instagram, just search for Aussie English, you'll find me, and watch my stories because I put the question box up in those stories, usually on Mondays. Okay, anyway, we got heaps of questions coming in. I should add, before we get started, don't forget if you have a premium podcast membership so that you can access bonus episodes, the transcripts for episodes, everything like that. You can suss this out. You can learn more about it at aussieenglish.com.au/podcast. But if you have that membership, just remember that these Pete's 2 Cents episodes don't come with transcripts. They're the only episodes that don't come with transcripts, and it's so that I can quickly edit them, quickly put them up. I can make them longer. I don't have to transcribe them and spend a lot of time doing that. And obviously, it's also a good reason to practice just your listening comprehension, you know? So treat them as bonus episodes with no transcripts, is what I'm trying to say. I've had a few questions recently. Where are the transcripts? It's not working. It's not working. These episodes don't have them, okay? So Pete's 2 Cents episodes don't have them, but all the other episodes have transcripts. And again, you can get them if you would like, so you can study and listen and read and everything like that at the same time. Get bonus episodes. Go check it out at aussieenglish.com.au/podcast. Okay, so here we go. We got lots of questions here. What is the most dangerous animal in Australia? Or animals. This one comes from SK Lad. So it depends what you mean, because there are different things that dangerous can mean. Dangerous could mean that the animal kills the most number of humans each year, in which case it would probably be a horse. You probably wouldn't have picked that, but it's actually livestock and horses in particular. I think they kill, let's have a look. I remember looking this up a while ago. Deadliest animals in Australia list. I'm pretty sure horses were at the top. And it was like dozens of people a year die from falling off horses and maybe driving into them. I would imagine that you are much more likely to be really, really, really harmed if you drive into a horse than if you drove into, say, a possum, you know? So yeah, it's horses. I can't seem to find the article here. So you'll just have to take my word for it. But things like crocodiles, sharks, snakes, on average, I think crocodiles kill like 1 or 2 people a year out of, 30 million people in Australia. Great white sharks, about the same, or sharks in general, might be 1 or 2 people a year. Snakes, it's usually 1 or so, and that's like brown snakes pretty much. So eastern brown snakes, and they're probably going to be killing people on farms or people who handle them. There was a video I saw recently, which I think I mentioned on here, and there was a young guy, he must have been in his like late teens or early 20s, in Queensland, and he'd picked up what he thought was a tree snake, which I believe aren't venomous, but it was a baby brown snake, one of the second deadliest snake in the world in terms of venom potency. And in the video where he's holding this thing, it suddenly turns around and just bites his hand. And it's a tiny snake, it's probably not even as thick as your little finger. But when they're babies, they don't control their venom as much, so they can just give you everything. They can inject a whole lot. They may not give you a dry bite where there's no venom. They may just envenomate you with everything they have as a defensive mechanism, hoping that you will go away and leave them alone. This snake did that, and he, I think, pretty quickly realized that he was in trouble because he was having, I think he started losing feeling in his arm. It was creeping up his arm, and he called the ambulance, and as the ambulance arrived, he stopped breathing, and I think his heart may have stopped as well, because from what I understand, a lot of Australia's venomous snakes, especially those elapids, the ones that are like eastern brown snakes and taipans, they have like a neurotoxic venom that attacks the nervous system and shuts down the nervous system of their prey, pretty much just killing them instantly from their heart stopping or breathing or muscles or, whatever, just not working because the nerves are damaged. So that happened to him, but he managed to get in the hospital. He got into the ambulance and was taken to the hospital in time and survived. But yeah, it's pretty frightening how quickly a snake like that can kill you, even though it looks tiny. But yes, the deadliest animals in Australia probably aren't what you expect. They will be things like dogs, well, not cats. What am I saying? Cats? Geez, yeah, domestic cats. Yeah, they're the number one culprit. No, there'll be things like dogs, cows, horses, those larger animals that people tend to interact with a lot more frequently, if that makes sense. But yeah, another question might be, what's the scariest animal in Australia? There's a lot of scary animals for different reasons. And I'm trying to think of which would freak me out the most if I encountered it. I think a shark or a crocodile, because I would think I'm pretty much fucked. Like, I'm done for, right? If I'm anywhere near water or in the water when it comes to a crocodile, it's pretty much over. I don't think there's much most humans can do if it gets you. And the same with sharks. It's like if it wants you, it's over. Whereas like with at least a spider or a snake or a blue ring octopus or something, you can kind of get away from it. You can get up, you can swim, you can run, you can do whatever to try and separate yourself from that thing. Whereas when it comes to something like a large predator in the ocean or in a river or something, there's a lot less that you can do. All right, let's keep going. When are you going to do another AI story episode? Okay, so this one is from Ben Porat. So I assume that you mean like those episodes that I did a while back where I was using AI images in those stories and I was using AI to help me write them. I was sort of testing the waters to see what you guys think or thought of those episodes, and it seemed like you guys really, really enjoyed them. I'm trying to think, what's the most recent episode? There was one, the cafe one was really, really good. I think it was at Luke's Cafe or Coffee Van or something like that. Coffee Van, Aussie English, YouTube. It's up on YouTube for free. Yeah, it's called Luke's Coffee Van or Jake's Coffee Van. Forgive me, Jake's Coffee Van. I published this at the end of last year. It's 80 minutes long, and the story is about 10 minutes long. And I play it sort of at the start of the lesson, and then I go through line by line and break down all of the vocabulary and everything in the story, and then I play the story again for you. So I was sort of trying out that style of teaching to see what you guys thought, and it seemed like you enjoyed it quite a lot. So I might try and put together a course where I do that more often, right? So you could have like a 30-day course or something with a story like this. The issue is they take so long to put together because I have to sort of write the story. I then try and insert lots of interesting vocab and expressions and daily Australian English in those stories. I then create it, record it, and then video myself going through one by one all of the different lines. And I have to create all the images using AI so that the story is more enjoyable to read and watch at the same time. I find that that's really helpful, the fact that you are watching whilst reading so that you can see images displaying the concepts and ideas and things that are being talked about in the text. I think that's a more effective way of learning and remembering vocabulary. And one of my students, Yusuf, I mentioned him quite a bit now. Yusuf was saying he loved this episode and that ever since watching it, there's some vocab I remember he was telling me about, and he's like, I just won't ever forget that now. So I appreciate the interest, and clearly you guys really enjoy that, and I'll try and do more of them in the near future and put together potentially a course like this that'll teach you like everyday English in everyday situations. Again, if you're interested in something like that, please shoot me a message on Instagram or send me an email at pete@aussieenglish.com.au or message me on Facebook. Let me know that you want one of those sorts of lessons or courses to come out soon because you really enjoy them, and it'll show me that more of you are after those things and would like me to do that. Our next one. G'day. What's the meaning of smack the bird? And I've been rabbiting on it in your episodes. And I've been rabbiting on. Oh, okay. Smack the bird was just a phrase that I started using because we used to have, in my expression episodes, there was a section where there would be the call of a kookaburra. So I was making a joke like I hit the bird and it starts making the kookaburra sound. The funny thing that I'll share with you guys, I hope there's no children listening because this is a bit R-rated. So if there are, you might want to skip ahead 30 seconds. I did a Google search because I'm like, I wonder if this is an expression in English. And I'm pretty sure if I type in like meaning slap the bird, The first thing to come up in Urban Dictionary is that it means for a woman to either masturbate or give or receive oral sex. So you can probably understand why I stopped using it. Why I stopped saying it. Because I was worried. I was thinking, God, I just spontaneously came up with that phrase thinking, okay, hit the bird and make the kookaburra call on the episodes. But then did a Google search and was like, good grief, all of my students are going to be Googling this thinking, what does this mean? And they're going to come up, it's going to come up with, these R-rated expressions. To be fair, I have never heard anyone in Australia say slap the bird or smack the bird to mean those things. That is why I was okay using it originally. And you never know. I might go back and just decide, nah, screw that. I'll still use it. It means what I want it to mean in this situation. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting discovery. All right, next one. The previous one came from Morale. This one comes from Rencibe or Hincibe if you're Brazilian. Please explain more about democracy sausages / hot dogs. So when my wife and I recently had to vote in the last election and Labor won that election, we had to go to a certain place at a certain time to register and then vote and do all that sort of stuff. Well, not register, but you get your voting stuff and then you go somewhere inside and you get a private booth and you fill out your voting form. So you do that somewhere, and then usually they're at schools, primary schools, or at just those public sort of areas, council places, libraries. It'll be all sorts of stuff, whatever the local building is that can be used for that. And quite often they'll have something like a fundraising sausage sizzle. So a sausage sizzle is where you have like a barbecue. People are cooking sausages. Those sausages are sizzling on the barbecue. That's why it's called a sausage sizzle. And culturally, we just, get bread that you would buy from a bakery or the supermarket. You get maybe some onion. You get the sausages, and you'll have your choice of like barbecue sauce, tomato sauce, or mustard that you can put on top of your sausage. And you pay a certain amount of money. There's often drinks there. You can get a bottle of water. You can get a Coke, Sprite, Fanta, whatever it is. They have cans of soft drink. And the money often goes to the school or it'll go to some sort of a charity or whatever it is. So that's a democracy sausage. The idea is that we live in a democracy in Australia and that when we go and vote, there's always a sausage sizzle. And the cultural thing to do is after you finish voting that you buy a sausage if you are so inclined, if you would like to, and you eat it. So that's how it is. It's pretty expensive though now, guys. I think I paid like $3.50 or $4 or something for the sausage and was just like, good grief, that's a lot. That is a lot for probably, less than $1 worth of food if I'd bought the loaf and the pack of sausages and everything and divided it up. Anyway, so yeah, my wife and I enjoyed that and we took a photo and put it up on Instagram. So I assume that's why you're asking. All right, the next one comes from Shadzi, who asks if I am still doing private lessons. I am. So if you are interested in private lessons via Zoom with me, feel free to send me an email at pete@aussieenglish.com.au and I will send you the details. I think I've got a pretty full schedule at the moment. I have about 30 or 40 classes a week. At the moment, it's pretty full on, to be honest. But there's still a few spaces around if you are interested. We can definitely do that. And what I help my students with most is usually coming up with an effective plan as an adult, as a professional, as a parent, someone who is, busy and trying to still improve their English and is an adult and trying to balance all this sort of stuff. I come up with a plan with them and we work on that. We get together once every week, sometimes more, depending on what the person's working on. And we focus heavily on the things that are important to them. It might be pronunciation, might be fluency. It might be developing their listening skills. It may be that they're preparing for a job interview. So one of my students recently was preparing for a job interview that she had, and we were doing, I think, about 5 or 6 lessons in a row each day to just really go through job interview questions, like mock job interview questions, and I was correcting her and everything like that and giving her important feedback. And I hope, Rashmi, if you're listening, I hope that you got the job, mate. You got to let me know when you hear back finally. So yes, I'm still doing lessons if you're interested. shoot me an email or shoot me a message on Instagram or Facebook and I can send you the details. All right, let's keep going. Avon asks, can you recommend a book to start reading to improve my English at an intermediate level? To be honest, this is the sort of thing, anytime someone says, can you recommend a TV show? Can you recommend a book? Can you recommend a movie? I can, but I need to know more about you personally and your interests, because my interests and the things that I would recommend are unlikely to be what would be perfect for you in your current situation. So something that I would suggest here, if you're using AI of some kind, ChatGPT, whatever it is, Copilot, Gronk, whatever the AI is, DeepSeek, I think is another one that's free. So go check that out. You can use any of these. What I would do in this situation is tell them about your situation with English. This is my level. These are my goals. This is what I would like to achieve. Can you recommend some good intermediate books to help me improve my English and achieve these goals, right? So if I was in a lesson with you right now, I would want to know, what are your interests? What would you read if it was in your native language? What do you like reading anyway? And can we find some kind of equivalent in English? What are your goals? Are you trying to improve your vocabulary and you're not phased about if it's American English, British English, or Australian English? Are you trying to learn more Australian English? Are you trying to learn more British English? Are you trying to learn formal English, informal English? Are you trying to learn academic English about engineering, about physics? I would want to know all these things. And then I would try and suggest a certain book or series or movie or podcast or whatever it was that would fit your particular requirements. And so that's why I suggest in this situation, if you aren't in a private lesson with me and chatting with me and you want these sorts of recommendations, ChatGPT or AI of some kind might be useful because it has access to the internet and so much information behind it that if you can put in your interests, your hobbies, your passions, the sorts of TV shows, movies, books, and everything that you like anyway, and then your goals with English, and then ask for some suggestions, it will probably give you some very good suggestions. And then you can obviously go and investigate a little bit, find out, are these books actually going to be appropriate? Are they going to be easy for me to understand? Can I find them? And then try and get your hands on one of them. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to just tap out. If you're watching a TV show, a movie, reading a book, I think quite often language learners, including myself, and it's probably not just language learners, but people consume these sorts of media and feel like they need to finish it, even if they don't like it. So my point here is, if you find yourself reading a book and you're like, oh my God, I hate this book. It's so boring. I'm not motivated to read it. I'm only doing this on discipline alone. I'm forcing myself to do this. Dude, just tap out. Find something else. It is totally okay to move around, change what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're studying. It does not matter. And really, it's going to be more helpful for you in the long run because you are going to stay more fully engaged with the material that you are studying than if you were to try and just force yourself to consume or finish consuming what you start. Okay, so that's the other thing too. If someone suggests something or you find a suggestion or you use ChatGPT or whatever it is to find some book or TV show or movie and you realize into it, this is kind of crap. I don't care. I don't want to watch this. I'm not invested. Just find something else. Tap out, find something else. Okay? All right, next question. This one comes from Christina Chu. How can I improve my Aussie accent as a female, as a woman? So I think the main thing here, there's levels to this. I would find a model. Who are you trying to sound like? So find someone your age, find someone who sounds similar to you. Like if you're a young girl who's, I don't know, late teens, early 20s, you probably don't want to focus on listening to someone like, Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger and trying to sound like them, right? Like, they're extreme examples, but you know what I mean. You probably want to find a young girl of a similar age to you who has a similar voice sounding to you and then try and mimic what her pronunciation is like, if that makes sense. So that would be the first thing. It's like, find an accent model, someone that you want to model your accent on. You want to sound like that person. And this goes for anyone trying to master the pronunciation of any language. Try and find someone that sounds like how you would like to sound. And then you followed up with another question here. How can I improve my Aussie accent? Any recommendations? Okay. So then breaking it down with pronunciation, what I usually do with students is I will listen to them. So in the first lesson, I usually get to know them and I ask them a series of questions to get an idea of what their level is, what their background is, what their goals are, and the things they're having trouble with. So if it was me and you, I would be listening to you and trying to work out what sounds you have a problem with. I would also want to know what your native language is, and I would then get a better idea of the problems you probably have. Like a common one that I notice, say, Indians, right? People from India, and there's loads of different accents and languages from India, but typically a common thing they have is that they mispronounce V's and W's. They find those difficult. Iranians are the same. TH is pretty much everyone. Everyone finds TH is hard. Indians will find the way that we pronounce R difficult, like the R sound. Typically, the tongue is further back in the mouth, so they would say it more like like further back in the mouth. They also place a lot of their vowel sounds much further back in the mouth. So there are all these certain things that you, as a native speaker of a different language, will be mispronouncing in Australian English, if that's your goal. So I would be trying to understand what those things are, and then I would give you exercises to do on a regular basis to try and take out single pronunciation things, one at a time. So you would target, say, the V and the W if you were Indian or Iranian and having trouble with that. You would then the next week target the TH as well. And what I like to do, and you can do this by yourself, I quite often I use so much AI now, guys, like it's ridiculous. So forgive me if I sound like a broken record and I'm always talking about ChatGPT, but I use it a lot and it is a very useful tool for this sort of thing, and you're about to see why. So if we were working on V and W, quite often I would get a list of words that start with V or have a V sound pronounced in them, and a list of words with W. It's two separate lists. I will show my students how to articulate those sounds using their mouth and their lips and everything. And we will go through those lists independently, like so, one list at a time, all the V words, all the W words. We then often do minimal pairs. So this is where you would have something like wine and vine or wet and vet. The only change between the two words is the sound you're trying to master, or the sounds you're trying to master the pronunciation of. So you've started with each sound on their own. You're then contrasting the sounds with small sounds that you're making, right? So like wet and vet, it's very reduced down to just those sounds in words. Then I would put them into short sentences. The vet went outside and got wet. We found some wine on the vine. I would be working with those sorts of sentences with my students and sending them those voice messages on WhatsApp, for example, with all of the pronunciation of these different things and videos for how to pronounce it, and getting you to do that. So if you're on your own and you want to study this by yourself, obviously, shameless plug, I would recommend that you check out my Australian pronunciation course. You can do so at aussieenglish.com.au/APC. So go check that out. And in that course, you will learn the IPA in the first section. The second section, you'll learn all of the vowels and consonants. And then in the third section, you will learn the more advanced sound changes and spoken English pronunciation that happens with native speakers of Australian English. So it's very good as a reference. You can go through it and target the specific sounds you're trying to master. I would take your language. What's your native language? Put it into ChatGPT and ask, what are the sounds that people who speak this language find difficult to pronounce in Australian English? It should give you a list. It should give you the most common sounds. It'll give you the consonants. It'll give you the different vowel sounds. And then I would target those. You can ask ChatGPT to kind of switch into an Australian accent, though it's a little strange. Like it sounds like an Australian that's lived in America for a long time, to be honest. In fact, let's see. Let's see here. Oh, I've got ChatGPT here with me. Hey, ChatGPT, can you introduce yourself with an Australian accent?
G'day, I'm ChatGPT, your AI mate, here to help you out. I can chat about anything you like, whether it's practicing Australian English, having a yarn about Aussie culture, or just answering your questions. What can I do for you today?
That's all, mate. Thank you. Actually, can you switch to your American accent quickly and introduce yourself as well?
Of course. Hey there, I'm ChatGPT, your friendly AI assistant. I'm here to help you with anything you need, whether it's practicing English, chatting about culture, or answering your questions. What can I do for you today?
Can you repeat the same thing but now in a British accent?
Absolutely. Hello, I'm ChatGPT, your helpful AI assistant. I'm here to assist you with anything you need, whether it's practicing English, discussing culture, or answering any questions you might have. What can I do for you today?
Are there any accents that you find difficult in English to use on this platform?
I can switch between a variety of English accents pretty easily, including Australian, American, and British. However, more regionally specific or less common accents can be a bit trickier to replicate accurately. Let me know if you have a particular accent in mind, and I'll do my best.
What's your best impersonation of an Australian bogan accent?
All right, here goes. G'day, mate. How you going? I'm ChatGPT, your go-to for a fair dinkum yarn about anything you need. Whether you want to chat about Aussie slang, have a chin wag, or just need a bit of a hand, I'm here for you. What can I do for you, mate?
Sorry, guys. I've never actually asked it those questions. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what the different accents sound like. The Australian one's not bad. It's not bad. It gets the basic stuff right. Like you can hear the R's aren't there. The American R's where they would be like, sure, how are you? You know, they're using those R's all the time. We don't do that in Australian English. So she did switch that. But then there's certain vowel sounds and I'm like, it sounds like an American putting on a pretty good Australian accent. And the same thing happened to my ear when I'm listening to the British version. I was like, this does not sound 100% like received pronunciation from Britain. It sounds like an American doing a British accent. So there are pitfalls, you know, it's not absolutely perfect. But it's not bad. And it was funny when it tried to do the bogan one, it kind of just sounded like a normal Australian, but it added in so much slang. It did a few things like it was saying, I'm here for ya, or what can I do for ya, or how you going, which was pretty impressive. It's kind of shortening these words and changing the pronunciation of them to sound a little more informal and I guess, you know, broad in terms of the accent or bogany. But it couldn't nasalize and it wasn't like, it wasn't doing it for me. It just sounded like they were using a lot of slang and vocab. Anyway, my point is what we were talking about, helping you with pronunciation. Go through those steps. You can get these words, minimal pairs, and then phrases, and you can work with ChatGPT to either read them out to you and then you listen and repeat, or you just read them out to ChatGPT and ask for feedback. Its feedback on your specific pronunciation errors are going to be pretty simple. It's probably not going to have really, really accurate feedback, and that's where you would need someone, shamelessly again, like myself, to give you direct feedback. But it's a good tool for creating word lists and sentences that you can practice out loud, showing you how to do linking, you know, between different sounds, vowel sounds, or telling you about silent letters and all that sort of stuff. It can show you where stress is. It can transcribe things into the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, so that you can read that whilst you look at the words and understand how they're said. So I would be using AI quite a bit. I would probably be finding a model that you want to model your pronunciation on, doing a lot of shadowing exercises with podcasts or TV shows or movies with that model, you know, that person that you're trying to copy. So playing a little bit, pausing it, trying to say it exactly as they do. And I would potentially be getting lessons with someone like myself who teaches Australian pronunciation and asking for feedback. You know, am I getting this sound right? How do you make this sound? How should I practice this? How frequently? What should I do now? Now that I've got this sound down, what's the next one? All that sort of stuff. Okay, so I hope that helps. What else? What else can I add in here about pronunciation? The other thing from doing loads of lessons is that most students find the stress patterns difficult in Australian English, or just in English in general. So saying like information and stressing it correctly. Information, getting that the secondary and primary stress correct in that word, and also weakening the other syllables. Information, like not saying the vowel sounds clearly, like information, you know? I'm overdoing it, but quite often people will have trouble in English because the spelling is not always a perfect representation of how a word is said. So that is quite often a big problem. And it's not necessarily that students are unable to say the sounds. It's that when they look at the spelling of the word, they get confused because there's, say, an O there, but it's actually an sound. You know, the word or world, it has an O in it. So they'll change the pronunciation instead. The same with like want, W-A-N-T. They might say as like want instead. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff that I would also be working on and trying to point out, I guess, if we had lessons and be like, okay, this sounds like this, and this. This is what you need to do. So hopefully that helps, Christina. Good luck. I also got my computer back, by the way, guys. I should tell you the story. So yeah, I mean, I've already mentioned it. I spilt water on my computer because I'm a dumbass. And I had a very top-heavy cup next to my laptop while I was trying to record a podcast. The microphone was sitting in front of where the cup was, and I couldn't see it, and I accidentally hit it with my hand and tipped it all over my computer. And the computer was cactus. It was kaput. It was a goner. So I took it into the Mac place, and they were like, it'll be $5,000 to replace everything inside of it. I was like, can I just replace the broken parts? And they said, nope, it's everything or nothing. We can recycle it for you for free. Thanks. Thank you so much, Mac. Recycle a $7,000 computer for free. Yeah, great. At least that's what it would have cost to replace today, right? Now they're $7,000 apparently. So I took it to another place, an aftermarket sort of place, and they, I'm pretty sure they just ordered the parts from China, from probably the place that makes them for Apple, and it cost $1,700 to fix. It was the logic board that was gone, and that was about $700 to fix. And then it happened to be the screen had gotten water in the connection there or something, and the screen was completely kaput. So the screen had to be replaced, which cost me another $1,000. But all things said, much, much better than having to buy a new computer or having to replace everything inside of it through Mac for a ridiculous amount of money. So yes, if you guys ever spill water on your computers, as a friendly announcement and reminder, go to an aftermarket computer repair guy. You guys are probably saying, yeah, no duh, Pete. And ask them to check it out and see what they can do. Because, yeah, after going to Apple and them telling me, nah, it's completely screwed, it's broken, you can't fix it, it's fucked. And then me taking it to the aftermarket guys and they're like, yeah, that's easy, we can do that. I'm very kind of, I guess, disheartened with Apple. So, yeah, there's the story. So I have my laptop back. Okay. Let's see. What's the next question here? This one comes from Yajuva Bardvaj. I think I've said that correctly. In fact, I'm almost certain I haven't, but forgive me. Hopefully you recognize your name, mate. We've heard about that mental toughness in Aussies. How do parents over in Australia, nurture their kids? I don't know. That's an interesting one. Like, I don't know if I would say we're particularly tough mentally compared to other nations. You know, I think there are tough people from everywhere. Like, I had a private lesson today with one of my Russian students, and I tell you what, if you want someone tough, talk to a Russian. Talk to someone from the Northern Hemisphere. Talk to someone from a country that doesn't live in a democracy. You know, it isn't a democratic country. Talk to people from Africa. Talk to people from Southeast Asia. There are tough people, strong people from everywhere, and they're usually tough and strong for all sorts of different reasons. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we have a bit of mental toughness in Australia because of our history. We went through 2 world wars. It's a hard country to live on. A lot of our ancestors were, for a lot of people, indigenous and were tough in order to live in a continent or on a continent like Australia in the environment they lived in. But we're also settlers or migrants who came here more recently and had to start farms or start businesses from scratch. You know, they came with only the clothes that they had on their back. They got off the boat and they had to start from scratch. How to teach your kids this? I think it's mainly just not solving their problems for them too much. You know, I think we live in a world now where it's pretty easy to just solve your problems, whatever they are, you know, whatever the question might be or whatever, you know, I can't do this. What do I do? So I try where possible to get my kids to work it out or get my kids to, you know, find the answer to something or, you know, they find something difficult and I try and show them it's difficult, but you can do it. You just have to practice. You know, one one example was my son was having like a sort of a tantrum or a meltdown about not being able to do things from the beginning. Like he would try something new and he'd be like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I think we had a moment where he was playing PlayStation games. So he got into Minecraft more recently and Ratchet and Clank and Crash Bandicoot and Lego Star Wars. We're playing these games. Only a year ago, he wasn't that good at controlling the controller, like, because it's got two sort of toggle sticks on the PlayStation controller that are sort of quite hard to control, especially with small hands. But you have to get used to how each stick moves the character. You know, one is going to move the character forwards, backwards, side to side, and the other one moves them up, down, and around. So you have to kind of get these things working together so that you can orient yourself in the world and better, you know, move through the game or whatever. And so he was having trouble with that. But then after about, you know, a month or two, he got really good at it. You know, he's probably as good as I am now at a lot of these games. And I think we were trying to ride a bike. I took him bike riding once and I said, let's take the training wheels off and let's do it, mate. You can do this. And he was like, I can't. I don't know how. I can't do it. And I was saying to him, mate, it's like the video game. Remember how you said you couldn't do it, you couldn't work it out, and you were getting frustrated. But then after practice, for a few weeks, for a month or so, you could do it. And now it's not a problem at all. So I was trying to point that out to him. And I said, do you think it might be a similar situation with the bike? Like, do you think that if we take the training wheels off, but I hold you, I make sure you won't fall and hurt yourself, it might just be that you need to spend some time practicing this and you will be able to ride. You know, you'll be able to ride just like a big kid. And he was like, yeah, you know, like, I think I could do that. I could try and do that. And so, I got him to get on the bike. We took the training wheels off and I was holding his sort of shirt behind him to sort of keep him upright. It took him like 10 minutes. It took him 10 minutes to get his balance, to get a feel for how to move the bike around. And then he was zooming around like an animal. And I was like, again, I reinforced that with like, look how good you've done. What did you do? You know, tell me, how did you just learn to do that? You couldn't do it a minute ago. What did you do? And he's like, I just practiced. I did what you said, Dad. And I'm like, there you go. You know, that's all you had to do. You could do it. You just had to spend time focusing on it, practicing it, and trying to get better. And it came with time, you know, and you'll still improve. But getting upset with yourself and thinking you can't do it isn't going to solve any problems. You just have to keep applying yourself and trying, getting up and, you know, dusting yourself off and trying again. So that's my kind of philosophy. Again, I'm not an expert. I just have two kids and I, you know, try these different things and see how it goes. But a big part is, I guess, challenging them with things that they can't necessarily do straight away and then helping them go through the process of learning how to do it and showing that they figured it out, that they are the ones who did the work. It wasn't just handed to them or given to them or solved for them, but they themselves did it. And that gives them a great sense of accomplishment, of pride, of satisfaction, I think, and that toughness. So yeah, you'll have to let me know what you reckon. Ed Mack here says, já aprendeu pouco de português, which is Brazilian Portuguese for, have you already learned a little bit of Portuguese? Where have you been, Ed? Sim, claro, eu consigo falar em português. Yes, clearly I can speak in Portuguese. I'm married to a Brazilian, mate. I didn't have a choice. There was no option. I had to learn, sink or swim. No, the story with that is I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu probably a decade ago I started, even longer. Yeah, it would have been longer than that. It would have been around like 2013, I think, that I started training at a gym in Melbourne called Absolute MMA. Absolute MMA. If you're interested in like kickboxing, boxing, MMA, grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, judo, wrestling, you can go there and you can do all that sort of stuff. It's a beautiful, beautiful environment. Absolutely loved it. So free shout out to them. My teacher was Tiago. He's moved back to Brazil and I think he has a gym in Sao Paulo called Onya Martial Arts, Onya, Onya as in good Onya. So he took that from Australia, Onya. Geez, talk about cultural appropriation. So yeah, go check him out if you're in Sao Paulo and doing jiu-jitsu and say g'day, Pete sent you. But yeah, so I started doing that and I was learning French at the time, or at least trying to get my French back from high school. Je peux parler français aussi. I can speak French too, or at least I could. I think, how would you say that? Je pouvais parler français. I used to be able to speak it, but I haven't really used it for a long time. Anyway, when I was at the gym, there were so many Brazilians around. I was like, I might as well be learning Brazilian. They're here like rats. You know, they're bloody everywhere. Obviously, it was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym. And so I started learning a whole bunch there. Most of the, swear words and oi, tudo bem? Like, how are you? How's it going? And then I met my wife. We moved to Canberra because she got a job at the Brazilian embassy there. And then we went through a whole bunch of different houses trying to find somewhere to live, which was a complete nightmare in Canberra. And we ended up moving in with 5 other Brazilians. Literally 5 other Brazilians in a unit. So there was 6 of them, I think. It would have been maybe a total of 5, all up, including my wife. So again, it was sink or swim. I didn't have a choice. I had to learn quickly. They were always speaking in Portuguese. I remember there were a few of these moments where we were all like having parties and drinking and sitting around a table, eating brigadeiro, which is like it's kind of like it's a dessert. How to explain it? It's made from like butter, chocolate powder, and condensed milk, and they put it in a pan and heat it up. I think they're the only ingredients. And it's to die for, guys. Brigadeiro. Like brigadeiro, if you were to say it in Australian English. It's phenomenal. If you ever get to try it, give it a go. I don't know how most Brazilians don't have diabetes, because I swear to God, every single one of their desserts has condensed milk in it, and it's just brutally sweet, but often amazing. And so, yeah, it always astonishes me that, one, Brazilians tend to be so thin and beautiful, both men and women, and they also don't, at least from what I understand, at least the ones I've met in Australia, don't have diabetes. I'm always very impressed. So yes, eu consigo falar pouco de português. I can speak a little bit of Portuguese. This one comes from Jeffu. What are some fun phrases to say to a kid being funny or silly, like you silly sausage? And then I can't see the rest of the message. Oh man, silly sausage, silly duffer, you dag. Dag's a good one. Oh mate, you dag. That's kind of an affection. These are affectionate ways of referring to someone you think is being silly or stupid. But again, stupid feels almost too strong here. Like if my son was doing something silly around the house, I'd be like, what are you doing, you dag? You dag. That's a very common Australian phrase to use, or word to use, dag. And yeah, it just means someone sort of like silly, tacky, doing something embarrassing or wearing something embarrassing. Oh, what are you wearing, mate? That's so daggy. Why are you wearing? That's embarrassing. Oh, it's so daggy. So probably something like that. Silly duffer, you duffer. Again, these aren't strong. So you could say that like, yeah, you silly sausage, you duffer, you dag, you rascal, you little rascal. That's usually for someone who's a little bit cheeky. You cheeky rascal. But I'm thinking that's probably about it off the top of my head. We've got another one here from Soraya. Do you accept students for online teaching? I do. I've given you the details. Send me a message. Give me the coffee, Amias. I don't know what that one is. This one comes from Shoresh. Give me the coffee, Amias. I'm not sure. You'll have to let me know what you mean, mate. Armin, how much is your speaking class? Okay, so again, sorry guys, there's a lot of these ones about private lessons or about the academy. I've mentioned the private ones enough, so you know about that. Send me your messages and I'll send you all the details. It's going to depend on how many lessons you want to get, for how long you want those lessons to be, etc. The academy speaking membership, you can sign up for. It's open every few months, and it's, from the top of my head, it's about $70-something a month to come to get all the content on there, and to come to about 12 to 15 classes that are taught by Australian English teachers. So yeah, you can go and check that out at aussieenglish.com.au/speak. So SPEAK, and you will see the information there about that. Let's keep going. Hi, mate. What is the dish that you associate with your childhood? This one comes from Julia from Ukraine. Hey, Julia. I've known her for a long time. Beautiful, beautiful woman and family that she has over there. So I hope you're well, Julia. Childhood dish that I associate. That's a really good question. Childhood dish. You know what? My mum and my grandmother make a really, really good cheesecake. So that I had growing up all the time. And it would be, they would get that Philadelphia cheese. They would mix in loads of sugar into that, whip it all up. They would have certain sort of sweet biscuits, cookies that they get from the supermarket, and they crush up the biscuits. and they make the outside of the cake kind of out of those biscuits and then put the cheese in. And then they put on top, it's kind of like canned pineapple on the top. That, I grew up having that pretty much, birthdays and special events. That dish sticks in my memory, and I absolutely love it. I'm going to have to get that recipe and learn to cook it myself, because although I'll probably put on a lot of weight if I learn to do that myself. So, yeah, that's probably number one. I mean, there's the standard stuff like fish and chips. We used to always get fish and chips, go to the beach, or after school or something, my parents would go and get fish and chips and bring it home. We used to love it. But I don't know. I think we had quite a varied diet, to be honest. So I don't have any sort of specific cultural type dishes that I can really recommend. All right, let's do one more, and then I'm going to have to go pick up my son from school and my daughter from daycare. All right. What's the difference between Australia approaching for dating to Brazil, the Brazilian one, for example? Okay, I hope you know. All right, this one comes from Lacri. So, I don't know that much, to be honest. I've only dated, I'm trying to remember how many Brazilians. It's either one or two. I don't know. The first one didn't really count as dating. Make of that what you will, guys. I think you'll figure it out. We caught up once. The second one became my wife. So I don't have the biggest track record on dating Brazilians to really know. From what I understand, and from what I've heard from Brazilians, Australians are a lot more reserved and aren't going to jump your bones. They're not going to, try and rip your clothes off and get into your pants and kiss you and all that sort of physical stuff straight away with no obvious signal. My wife was always telling me about that. She was just like, how do you not get that, like, these signals mean that we want you to kiss us. We want you to jump our bones. We want you, we want you to get in there. We want to have some physical action with you. And I'm like, I think Australians are just more reserved, where they just don't assume. We've had that sort of modern feminism come through, and you asking for consent, all of that sort of stuff that's come through. And I think men in particular today are a lot more nervous about dating and find it difficult to navigate those kinds of interactions in person with people. Whereas I feel like Brazilians, again, you tell me, guys, I could be completely off, but from what I understand, Brazilians are a lot more forward. They're a lot more open sexually, and they're much more used to hookup culture, from what I understand. Again, I'm saying that. I'm using a lot of clarifiers here. Like, I remember when I was dating an ex of mine called Hannah about 15 years ago, her sister was dating a Brazilian. And I remember she loved the fact that he was so physical. She was just like, he just goes for it. He's not waiting for permission. And I'm like, that's an interesting way of putting it. But that was, at least from her story to me, that was kind of the appeal of this, unlike Australian guys who are a lot more reserved and waiting for, 10 signals before they try anything. She felt like she was the kind of person who obviously liked having to send less signals, but getting that kind of situation. I don't know if that makes sense. So yeah, they're the things off the top of my head. So I think, to be honest, Brazilians coming to Australia, male or female, be prepared for, if you're dating Australians, for them to not get the message easily. So, and that may be that they just don't know that you like them, or at least with other people. So you'll probably send those messages a lot more quickly. But if they're not sending them back to you, and it's not deadly obvious, like if you were dating another Brazilian, that this person is really, really keen on you, don't assume that just because they're a little more reserved, or because they don't, kiss you on the third date or whatever, that they haven't worked it out, or that they're not interested, or it's just that we're quite often waiting for 100% kind of signal. It's dead obvious before we jump in, if that makes sense. And for Australians dating Brazilians, get ready for them to just be very forward. They're going to be direct. They're going to tell you what they think. They're going to tell you what they want. They're very sexual. They enjoy their bodies and they enjoy your bodies, if that makes sense. Like, they're much more likely to hug you. They're much more likely to be affectionate with you. They're much more open in that sense, is what I'm trying to say. they're more likely to kiss you. So get ready for that kind of, it's going to be obvious. If they like you, it's going to be dead obvious, and don't let it put you off. I guess if you're an Australian, don't assume, oh, this person's keen, are they like this with everyone? I don't think it's that case. It's just when they like someone, they like someone. And it's not everyone. Not everyone is like this. These are stereotypes and, our cultures differ. But this is from what I've experienced and what I've learnt through my wife and through other friends who've been Brazilian or dated Brazilians. Those are the kind of cultural things that I can think of off the top of my head. The other thing is that Australians love going for coffee, so that might not be how you date in Brazil or other parts of the world. So if an Australian asks you, let's go get some coffee, and, you're both single and interested in one another, it's an invite to a date. Like, that's a date. If I was single and a woman said to me, hey, Pete, let's get some coffee, and it was just me and her, I would assume that was a date. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that helps. But I've been out of the loop now for almost 9 years. I'm married, so it could have completely changed since then. I don't know. You guys tell me. So yeah, shoot me a message. If you guys are Australian or Brazilian, or you have other interesting backgrounds and cultures when it comes to dating, as always, I invite you guys to send me a message on Instagram, send me an email, send me a message on Facebook, and let me know, what's your experience like? Was I right? Was I wrong with the Brazilian Aussie thing? Has it changed? Is it different? And what's it like for you from where you're from? What are the norms? Anyway, this is a long one today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. I didn't answer every single question, but I'll try and do more on Instagram as well, and I will stick up another Q&A thing this week. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. Tooroo.